Welcome to the Nerd Party.
Welcome to Great Shot Kid, the podcast on the Nerd Party that looks at all of the interesting aspects of filmmaking that sometimes you might overlook. I'm John.
And I'm Mike.
And this week we're going to be discussing Star Wars Rebels, the cartoon series from Disney XD that just wrapped up. Before we get into that, of course, thenerdparty.com/contact. If you want to reach us, go to thenerdparty.com and check out all the other shows that we have. Everything for people who love Doctor Who, Harry Potter, Star Wars, Star Trek, just nerd culture, and terrific interviews with different artists and filmmakers all across the world, really. And you can also reach out to us through facebook.com/thenerdparty. You can reach out to us on Twitter at twitter.com. Oh, of course, why am I saying twitter.com? The handle is Join Nerd Party, duh. And you can use the hashtag GreatShotKid. And, of course, on Instagram, The Nerd Party. So, all of that formality out of the way, Mike. Here we are at the end of a cartoon series that actually got a finale, a proper finale, which I think is a pretty rare sort of thing to encounter.
Yeah.
Star Wars Rebels. Now that the series is done, not just your thought of the finale, what is your opinion of the series overall now that it's completed?
I really, really liked it. You know, I mean, it's one of those things where, I mean, I was excited about Clone Wars when it came out. I think just because, you know, it's a new Star Wars, you know, cartoon thing, you know, all that stuff, right? Yeah. I mean, there's super cool, but I think in a lot of ways, as much as I liked Clone Wars, you know, I mean, I did suffer some fatigue during that show. You know, I stopped watching maybe in season 4. And then, you know, when it came on to Netflix with the new episodes, I, you know, barreled through I started again from the beginning. I'm like, let's watch this in the right aspect ratio now. And in the proper chronological order. That's how I did it. And you know, I'm like, this is really good, you know? And then, you know, then it ends a few more times, and I'm like, this is still really good, you know what I mean? But, you know, when the Rebels was sort of like announced and everything like that, I'm like, this sounds like it's going to be up my alley, you know? It's in the OT time, whatever kind of thing, and I mean, they pushed hard, especially early on, like, we are making this look like A New Hope, like with camera movements and with design elements and everything like that. And all that really appealed to me. And I also liked how, see, Clone Wars, I feel like it, here's the thing, like, I feel like the initial intention with Clone Wars was, let's make this super expansive and have it be very much sort of like an anthology. And 1 week we're going to be, you know, looking at Anakin and Obi-Wan, and then the next week it's going to be Plo Koon and Ponda Baba or whoever, you know. I forget who Ponda Baba is.
Ponda Baba is the invented
He's the
name.
Walrus Man, right?
Yeah, Walrus Man. He's always going to be Walrus Man. He will always be Walrus Man. Yes.
You could do an episode of Clone Wars about Walrus Man. Why not? You know? Anyway.
See, we'll come... I don't want this to derail into another one of our Clone Wars arguments, because the thing is, your complaints about Clone Wars are so off base, and we'll never... This is a John Carpenter moment for us.
Okay,
so let's just stay focused on Rebels here.
I'm going somewhere with this, okay? Like,
okay.
It felt like it was going to be this expansive, crazy thing where you could like watch one episode and not need to see the rest of it. And then it became, in a lot of ways, much more focused, you know, with the whole Anakin and Obi-Wan were like the central whatever, right? Along with Ahsoka. And I was like, well, that was, I mean, it almost felt like it was caught between two worlds and, you know, everything. Whereas with, it felt, I mean, honestly, in terms of like the storytelling, like the prequels being expansive, like galaxy spanning, whatever. Whereas like A New Hope is like a farm boy who gets caught up with this dude, and they go to save a princess, and it's like the four of them on the fringes of this massive galaxy instead of there being, Senate and everything like that. And Rebels is very much like in that New Hope vein, where it's like these are some people on a ship on one planet in one system, and we're really just not going to go beyond that scope. It's going to be very, very narrow in that storytelling. And I was like, maybe it was a response to the Clone Wars or whatever, but I was like, that's cool. That's refreshing. I like that because it's not unwieldy. You don't have to track a billion characters and lots and lots of time. It's much more straightforward in its storytelling, and I liked that a lot. And, I liked where they went with it. I think they course corrected here and there. They got rid of the slingshot lightsaber and all that stuff, which was maybe a little bit goofy. And it found its feet. And I think that it's really good. I know that some people complain about the animation style and how, maybe they didn't have as much money as Clone Wars. And honestly, if no one would have said it, I would have never thought it. I can definitely see it, but it never bothered me.
Yeah, I don't care about stuff like that. I'm resisting every urge to go back and re-prosecute the whole Clone Wars thing, because that series was just absolutely amazing, and I don't like there was a time, another host on the network, Matt Rushing, who also loves Clone Wars as I do. There was one night where I was just up late, and I was just like, oh, you know what, I'm going to watch a Clone Wars episode, and I started like sending him these text messages where I was like, this show, it's amazing, I miss it so bad, look at these shots, it's so cinematic. And so anyway, to bring it back to Rebels, I had a hard time getting into Rebels at first. Totally copped to it. First half of the first season, I was very lukewarm on it, and I was like, okay. Like, I liked aspects of it. I liked the characters. I liked the very accessible homages to the original Ralph McQuarrie. Like, all of that. I love it. I go nuts for it when I see an original Joe Johnston design or an original Ralph McQuarrie painting come to life. I don't care what the medium is. Call me a fanboy if you want to, but I see that and I'm like, oh, that Lothal looks like some of the original Alderaan things. Like, I like that. I even like the fact that they went back to the different lightsaber, the thinner lightsabers of A New Hope and stuff like that. But I didn't quite plug into it until they had a season break, and then they wound up finding the Jedi Temple and communicating with Yoda. And I was like, oh, wow, okay, on board. This is stuff. I got this. And then season 2 started really strong, and then it sort of like got a little muddled and then ended really strong again. And then Thrawn comes back, and I'm like, oh, Thrawn. And the Bendu took me a little bit to get into, actually. But I liked season 3, and then I think season 4 does what every fourth season or final season of a show should do, which is take everything and say, okay, here it is. We know we're ending. We're going to make this even better so that when you go back and you rewatch it, you've got this in your head and you know where you're going, and it's going to make this even better. And I think season 4 completely did that. And, even though there are plenty of people who disagree with me, I consider it like the last season of Lost, where by the finale, I was like, this whole journey's been worth it. Just for this season, the whole journey was worth it. So yeah, that's where I ended up with it. And I still think, there were so many concepts in. Okay, I guess Clone Wars inevitably comes into the conversation because I think that these course corrections that we might be referring to here are from moments in this series where it started to more closely resemble the Clone Wars and bring in things from the Clone Wars, like the clones themselves, and having an episode where they specifically have, they have the Separatists who are just waiting to actually surrender, to the Republic. And you have Ahsoka coming back naturally, is just, Ahsoka lives. I was one of those fans that was like, what? And than Ahsoka facing down Vader and having a huge thing in a Sith temple with all of these Inquisitors and flying lightsabers and stuff like that. I'm like, that screamed to me, this is a sequel to the Clone Wars. I'm totally on board with that.
Yeah, that's where it kind of lost me, because I was very happy with it being its own thing, and I really feel like, and I can totally understand, the creators who were the same as the creators on Clone Wars were like, we have some unfinished business that we need to take care of, and whatever, they're tying up loose ends because they have the opportunity to finish off a show which they had worked on for years and years and years and didn't get the finale that they were, leading up towards or whatever, And I felt like, well, I mean, it's very similar in a lot of ways, I think, to, the complaint that people have about that last episode of Enterprise, right? So These Are the Voyages, isn't that the name of it?
Yes.
It's like, yeah, okay, cool. They finished up the Ahsoka thing. They finished up the clone thing or whatever. But, like, if you're looking at it from the perspective of Rebels, it's like, why are we introducing all of these things now?
No. See, okay, this is where I'll throw a challenge flag on that, is the fact that the storyline still worked, but bringing in Ahsoka made it even better. And made it even better because once you introduce Vader to this, once you introduce that Kanan can kill the Grand Inquisitor, right, and Vader comes into the mix, we know Vader is so powerful. We know Vader is such a badass at this point in time that there's no way they can possibly stand up to him. Like, if he shows up, he's going to wipe him out. It might not be immediate. You have to introduce someone or something that can be a Vader stopper. And if you have an Ahsoka Tano in your back pocket and you have this character that you can explain quickly to people who weren't fans of the Clone Wars, and at the same time please fans of the Clone Wars, why wouldn't you use it? Like, it would seriously be like Marvel. We all know, for instance, that Adam Warlock's going to come into Infinity War because he's the only guy that can stop Thanos. This is all established. We know that. Sorry if that's a spoiler for anybody, but if you know anything about the comics, they already kind of blew that for you anyway in Guardians of the Galaxy Part 2. Or Volume 2, sorry. But, like, why would you not use that character? And bringing the clones back, I think, actually adds a lot of really nice history to everything that's going on as the journey of these characters becomes more and more intertwined with the galaxy itself. Like Luke, it starts small, this kid on a backwater planet, winds up meeting up with a Jedi, goes off on a space family adventure, and then the universe gets bigger and bigger and bigger as it goes.
I guess so. I guess the way that I saw it really was them not so much like expanding what was going on with Rebels, but really using Rebels as a vessel to finish off Clone Wars. And that's what kind of bothered me, especially as someone who prefers Rebels to Clone Wars. I was like, let it be its own thing. That's just kind of how I felt with it.
But it was its own thing. It just had these characters come back. I don't know, man. What I think that Rebels should especially be commended for is too many times. I mean, the whole reason Luke isn't brought back in until the last scene in The Force Awakens, and I think Abrams is right, because once Luke comes into the story, it's his movie. And he didn't want that. I get that. What I think Rebels did very well is it brought in these characters, these other elements, and it didn't do that. They still managed to tell their own story, but along the way, they had these characters, and they didn't let Ahsoka take over the whole storyline. She was there, and her storyline got resolved in a way over the course of the series, although not completely, I'm thrilled to say. So her story does go on, but it's only a part of this story. It's like where the Venn diagram overlays sort of thing.
It's interesting because, I mean, these two things do definitely seem to be two pieces of a larger thing, right? I mean, like it seems like there's Clone Wars and there's Rebels, and the two of them are kind of paired in the same way that, Empire and Jedi are paired or whatever, And I mean, I think it's reasonable to assume, if they haven't even flat out said it, that, that they're hard at work on another Star Wars cartoon right now, right? I mean, they've said that. Filoni has said, like, this is not the end, all that stuff.
Did they say that?
He
said that he's playing things close to the vest with Ahsoka. That because somebody asked him where's her full outfit, and it's apparently been designed with Killian Plunkett, and he's like, I'm holding on to some of this right now because we don't know where it's going to go. So maybe that's a hint, maybe it isn't. I don't know. I just know that the way she looked at the end of the series was phenomenal. Like I
didn't know that, but I mean, like when he was at Celebration or whatever, and he's like, this is the end of Rebels, but it's not the end of Star Wars animation, not by a long shot. And just knowing that it takes them like literally years to produce these things, right?
Yeah.
Like I've got to think that whatever, I mean, it's got to be safe to assume that the first season of whatever show they're working on is, at the very least, has been written, right? I mean, I would guess.
Yes, it's got to be, right?
And
yeah.
So they have whatever. They're obviously playing a long game here and everything, and I mean, who knows what it's going to be about? But we can use logic, and it's like Clone Wars, prequel, right? Rebels, original trilogy. It kind of makes sense that the next series is going to, in some way or another, be informed by the Disney era, whether it's going to be in between the two trilogies or whatever. And seeing as how there is a certain amount of continuity in these things, like, I mean, I don't know. See, like, my first thought was, the next one, the lead character is going to be the kid, Jason, right? But I mean, look! I just saw some interview with Filoni where he's like, "I don't really have a plan, but it's something that we could do in the future." I don't know. I'm kind of wondering if maybe he does have a plan. And
the thing is that flash forward back thing takes place after Return of the Jedi, so
right.
They would have to set the next series how many years after Return of the Jedi?
I think that that's a safe assumption. I mean, like, I wouldn't be surprised if it's sort of about the rise of the First Order or whatever it's called, or whatever, or the new era of Jedi being trained or whatever.
But see, that's interesting in and of itself to me, because I had, and this is pure supposition, I have no insight from an interview that I read or anything, but like when I went into Rebels, I thought it was Disney putting its imprint to sort of co-opt / rebrand the original trilogy so that it became a Disney property sort of thing. I don't think that happened here. I think there's very much the sense that it was headed in that direction, but I don't think it wound up being that, because I think at the end Rebels very much still feels like, I guess, what some people would call old school Star Wars at this point. Like, it doesn't feel like sequel era storytelling.
Yeah. And I remember when Rebels came out, there was someone online, I don't know who it was or what their thing was, but they were like, Rebels really seems to be an homage to the Fox era of Star Wars.
The Fox era. Okay, I like that.
Whatever you want to call it. And like, it's not about what's going on now. You would think that Disney would want to sort of, in the interest of synergy or whatever, make everything sort of in support of the new movies, right? So it kind of makes sense for them to do something in the era that they created, just because it's easier to exploit everything.
But the thing is, if the sequel trilogy is still going on, I mean, don't they need to leave that alone until the dust settles on that? Because the thing is, Clone Wars has the advantage of the prequels are settled. So they have very clear lines to color within. with Rebels, same thing. You have clear lines to color within. There are certain things that can and cannot happen. Well, there aren't certain things that can, but there are certain things that cannot happen. Like you can't kill Darth Vader in Rebels or anything like that. Which gives rise to the Inquisitors, which wound up being quite delightful in my opinion. But the dust isn't settled. I mean, maybe they haven't finished writing Episode 9 yet. Obviously, right?
Yeah, they said there's a script. But even regardless of that, I mean, how many books take place in this era and everything? I mean, there's enough. I mean, I'm not saying that they're going to have, even Kylo Ren or anything like that in this new thing, but enough to sort of like have an established idea of what occurred between episodes 6 and 7, so that they can place this show.
Well, considering, see, this is the thing. This is where it turns into like that quibbling thing, and like people. I'm kind of sick of the online arguments that go back and forth and everything. But it was plainly stated that they had no real plan or really fleshed out idea of what happened between Jedi and Force Awakens. Rian Johnson said as much, where he was like, "Okay, so what's the plan?" And they were like, "Yeah." And he was like, okay, cool. I can do whatever I want, right? Yeah, that's cool. So I would be surprised to find out that there was a definite plan supported in my brain by the fact that of all of the tie-in novels that they've thrown out there, they've either stayed really close to the original trilogy timeline or really close to the beginning of The Force Awakens. Like they've left this wide swath open. And the only book that I know off the top of my head that occurs like smack dab in the midst of the timeline is Bloodline. And I know there's Legends of Luke Skywalker, but I haven't read that yet, much as it might shock everybody. But, I've been doing a Tolkien reread with my kids, so that takes a while. So, I don't know. My thought would be that if there is something fleshed out to do between the films, wouldn't we have gotten more books set, 11 years after Jedi, 10 years before Force Awakens? Wouldn't they have been playing around in that sandbox more?
Maybe, but there are pockets for sure. And especially if, looking at the track record, their tendency is to kind of deal with the characters that they created in a sense, right? Like Ahsoka and everything. I mean, I guarantee you that Filoni knows where Ahsoka goes next, right?
Oh, yeah, no doubt. There's no question. She has to be there. Yeah.
So he can kind of structure his story around that,
That's true. Well, and the thing is that actually that speaks to if my read is right from the circumstantial evidence that there is a whole lot to play with, then there's no reason not to bring her back and have a series with her and Sabine going through. Then they're the old characters passing off to the new characters, and maybe that's the torch passing to they're called the Rebels again now, but the Resistance. So, yeah. I don't know why they'd rebrand so quickly.
Yeah, it's been like 30 years, Maybe they were bought out by a larger corporation.
No, but like the Resistance was a response to the First Order. We know that much. Mm-hmm. So why would you rebrand as the Rebels after you just take your first, butt kicking? Wouldn't you hang on to the brand a little bit? Especially if you have like your magic decoder rings and everything.
I'm
just saying. You're going to confuse people that I'm here to join the Resistance. We're the rebellion. Never mind.
Yeah.
I don't know. No. I was just saying. Just random thought. But, all right. So with Rebels, though, with the way that it's wound up, do you see any threads that they did not resolve the way that you would have preferred them to resolve? Or do you think they left anything open that is just like sort of like dangling business? I mean, besides, of course, the fact that, is Ezra dead? Is Thrawn dead? Obviously, they must not be, because Sabine says flat out that she and Ahsoka are going off to look for Ezra. But is there anything that you consider unresolved coming out of Rebels?
Not really. I thought it was a pretty satisfying conclusion. I think that they wrapped everything up nicely. I mean, not knowing whether or not Ezra is dead or whatever, where he is or whatever, that doesn't really seem like a cliffhanger to me or anything like that. It's just, open-ended, which is fine, It's perfectly reasonable to do. So, yeah, I thought the ending was pretty satisfying.
Excellent. Yeah, I did too. I thought I'll cop to it. I got teary at the end. Surprisingly. Like I said, it took me a while to get into Rebels, and it had its ups and downs for me here and there, but I was really legit invested in these characters by the end of it all. And when Kanan goes, I was moved. When they had the little, the postscript, I was deeply moved with that as well. And I mean, and I have to give them all the credit in the world for bringing Ian McDiarmid back for one last go as Palpatine. Hearing his voice is so wonderful. It's so, I know that Sam Witwer can do an incredible Palpatine. I loved the guy they got for the Clone Wars. Tim Curry's performance after that guy died was good, but man, nothing like hearing his voice. It just makes me smile.
Yeah, it's cool. I mean, they did that on a number of occasions where it's like, whoa, like with James Earl Jones as the voice of Darth Vader. It's like, what? How?
Yeah.
So it's cool.
Well, that with Adobe just premiered a new technology where if you get enough of a sample of a person's voice, you can type original text, and they did it with Jordan Peele at their conference.
Oh, really?
And yeah, because he was talking about using Adobe products for Get Out or something like that. And they literally took something he said and recorded, and they, flopped the words around. Yeah, okay, fine, well enough. But then they changed it, just the text, and it sounded like Jordan Peele saying it. And they said, oh, well, we're going to find ways to watermark things so that people, yeah, sure you will. Okay, we know that this technology is, you think deep fakes are terrifying now? Hey, just wait for the future. But the thing is, I think this means if they ever have if they ever have Darth Vader or the Emperor show up anywhere again, they just need somebody who can type really well. And how many samples of that guy's voice do they have?
Yeah.
So, interesting times to live in, man. Interesting times. So, okay, well, that's our recap of Rebels. Mike, if anybody wants to reach out to you and take up the mantle and give me a rest from beating you over the head about your opinion about the Clone Wars, where can they reach you online?
Well, you can find me on Twitter at Mumbles3K, and keep an eye out on there in the next week or so, and you might be able to find me somewhere else too.
Ooh, mysterious, like Ezra in hyperspace.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah. And, of course, you can find me out there. I am Kessel Junkie. And you can find me right here on the network co-hosting Aggressive Negotiations with Matthew Rushing. So with that, we thank you for joining us. And Ahsoka lives.
Join the revolution. Join the Nerd Party.